This one is titled The Thing in the Static. I don't know if anyone here will believe me. I wouldn't believe it myself if it hadn't happened, if I hadn't seen it over and over again until the thought of a television screen makes me want to smash everyone in sight. But I have to tell it, because if it's happening to me, it could be happening to others. It started 3 months ago, the night after my grandmother's funeral. I was staying at her house to sort through her things before we sold the property. She lived in this old, sagging one-story on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the wallpaper peels and strips and every floorboard makes itself known when you walk on it. The first night there, I couldn't sleep. Grief will do that, but it wasn't just grief. The house felt too alive, like every corner was watching me. I ended up in the living room, flipping through TV channels to drown out the silence. That's when it happened. I landed on a channel that was just static. White noise. Hissing snow. Nothing unusual. Old analog TVs still pick up that blank nothing sometimes. But this was different. The static wasn't random. It moved, like someone was brushing their hand across it. I leaned closer, squinting. The static shifted into a darker patch, like a shadow forming inside the snowstorm. And then it leaned closer too. I swear on my life, I saw a face push forward through the static, not breaking the screen but pressing against it like the glass was a window. Hollow eyes, a stretched, toothless mouth. I screamed and shut the TV off, heart hammering. The screen stayed black. But in the reflection, I could still see it, standing behind me. I spun around, and nothing was there. Just the empty living room, the old furniture draped in sheets, and the half-empty boxes of my grandmother's things. I laughed it off, convincing myself I was overtired. Too much stress, too much wine after the funeral. But it didn't stop. The next night, I was boxing up my grandmother's books when I heard the hiss of static from the living room. I froze. I hadn't turned on the TV. It was on by itself. I crept in, the hair on my arms standing straight. The static filled the room like a storm in a box. And again, the shadow moved across the snow, dragging itself closer to the screen. My breath hitched. I should have run, but I couldn't look away. The thing in the static tilted its head, and for the first time, I heard it. It whispered my name. I ripped the power cord from the wall. Sparks flew. The screen went dead, but the sound didn't. The static hiss kept going, like it was leaking out of the unplugged TV. I clamped my hands over my ears and ran to the bedroom, locking the door. I didn't sleep at all. In the daylight, the house felt normal again. But I couldn't shake the memory of that voice, that distorted hiss forming my name. I called my cousin, asked if Grandma ever mentioned weird things happening with the TV. He got real quiet. Then he said, "She told me she saw faces in it sometimes. Thought it was Dad visiting her. I told her it was just her mind going." I wanted to believe that too. I really did. But by the fourth night, I couldn't deny it anymore. I woke to the static. Not from the living room this time, but from my grandmother's old bedroom. I followed the sound, hard hammering, and when I pushed open the door, her TV was on, one of those huge boxy sets from the 80s. The static was alive, writhing. The face was clearer this time, closer. Its mouth opened wider, stretching until the jaw seemed to split. The hiss grew louder, turning into a scream made of white noise. And then a hand pushed through the glass. The screen didn't break. It bent, like the surface was liquid, rippling outward as a pale, long-fingered hand forced its way into the room. I stumbled back, tripping over her rug. The hand clawed at the air, groping blindly. I grabbed a lamp and smashed it against the TV. The glass finally shattered, and the sound cut off. When the dust settled, the set was dead, the screen fractured into a spiderweb. But on the floor, among the shards, I saw smears. Greasy, black streaks, like soot from a chimney. They led out of the room. That was the first night it left the TV. I should have left the house right then. But I told myself I imagined it, that I was breaking under stress. I spent the next day drinking coffee, going through boxes, convincing myself everything was normal. But at dusk, I noticed the streaks again. On the living room floor, smudged across the old carpet, leading to the TV stand. My stomach dropped. I'd destroyed the bedroom TV. This one was a different set. It turned on by itself while I watched. Static poured out, louder than before. The hiss became voices, too many at once, overlapping like a crowd. And in the screen, dozens of faces pressed forward, clawing to get out. I ran. I left the house, locked the door behind me, and spent the night in my car at a gas station. I should have gone home. Back to my own apartment, my own life. But something pulled me back to that house the next morning. My grandmother's things were still there, and I didn't want to leave the mess for someone else to deal with. When I stepped inside, the house was silent. The TVs were dark. I convinced myself it was over. Until I noticed the photos. Every framed picture of my family had changed. Not much, but in each one, the background was filled with static. White noise fuzzing out the scenery, like the world behind my family was gone. And in some of them, a figure stood in the snow. A tall, black silhouette. No face. No features. Just static where its head should be. It didn't stay in the house. The first time it followed me, I was back at my apartment 2 towns over. I'd finally left the house for good, packed my car with what little I could carry. My apartment felt safe. Clean. Bright. Then, while brushing my teeth that night, I heard it. The hiss. I turned. My bathroom mirror was full of static. Not fog. Not condensation. Static like a TV screen. And in the corner of the mirror, the face leaned closer. It's everywhere now. Not just mirrors, not just TVs. Any reflective surface. Windows, my phone screen when it goes dark, even puddles on the street. I see it watching, pressing forward, mouth opening wider every time. I stopped watching TV. Stopped using my phone at night. Covered every mirror. But it's still there. The hiss never leaves. I hear it when I close my eyes, when I try to sleep. I hear it whispering my name, layered with other voices, too many to count. Sometimes I catch words. Not just my name anymore. Let us through. You opened it. I don't know how much longer I can stand it. The reflections grow clearer every day. The hands push further out. Last night, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking in the kitchen. When I went to check, my microwave door had shattered outward, shards on the floor. There were smears on the tile. Black streaks, leading down the hall. I didn't follow them. I locked myself in my bedroom and stayed awake until sunrise. If anyone reading this has seen the same thing, the static, the faces, the hands, please tell me. I need to know I'm not alone. And if you ever hear a TV turn itself on at night, don't look at it. This one is titled The House That Waits. I've been a paramedic for 12 years. I've seen everything: shootings, car wrecks, overdoses, things I'll never get out of my head. But there's one call that ruined me, and I don't think I'll ever recover from it. It wasn't the blood. It wasn't the death. It was the house. And the fact that I think it's still waiting for me. The dispatch came in on a stormy night last November. Single caller, landline. The voice on the other end said, "Please come. She won't wake up." Then the line went dead. We traced it to an address way out of the city limits, down a stretch of county road I'd never been on. No streetlights, no neighbors for miles. Just endless forest and rain hammering on the windshield as my partner and I tried to find the place. When we finally did, it didn't even look like a home. More like a farmhouse left to rot. 2 stories, sagging porch, every window dark. But the porch light was on, buzzing weakly. We grabbed our gear and went inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Damp wood, mildew, and something else underneath. Something coppery. "Hello?" I called. No answer. The living room was old-fashioned, like the house hadn't been updated since the 60s. Heavy curtains, wallpaper curling at the edges, furniture coated in dust. No family photos. No signs of life at all. But the phone was still on the floor by the wall, receiver swinging like it had just been dropped. That's when we heard it. Footsteps upstairs. We exchanged looks. My partner, Torres, whispered, "Hello? EMS!" The footsteps stopped. We headed for the stairs, flashlights cutting through the dark. Every step we took up the staircase groaned so loud it sounded like the house was protesting. At the top, the hallway stretched out in both directions. Doors on either side. All closed. Then one creaked open by itself. We approached, nerves tight as wire, and pushed it the rest of the way. Inside was a bedroom. And on the bed lay a woman. Middle-aged, skin pale as wax, eyes closed. She looked dead. But when I checked, her pulse was there. Weak, but there. I started setting up equipment, checking vitals, but then I noticed something wrong. Her chest was moving. Not like breathing, more like pulsing. Something shifting just under the skin, rising and falling in the wrong rhythm. Torres whispered, "What the fuck?" The woman's eyes snapped open. They weren't eyes. They were black. Completely. And her mouth opened in a silent scream, stretching too wide, wider than a jaw should go. The lights blew out. I don't know how long we were in the dark. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment I saw the whole room was wrong. The wallpaper was moving, bubbling like it was alive. The floor sagged like a stomach heaving. And the woman on the bed, she wasn't a woman anymore. Her body was caving in, folding into itself, pulling down into the mattress like the bed was swallowing her whole. Her arms flailed once, then vanished into the sheets. We bolted. Down the hall, the doors slammed one by one as we ran, each bang echoing like gunshots. The staircase seemed longer than before, stretching out as if the house didn't want us to leave. I swear I felt the railing pulse under my hand, like a vein throbbing. By the time we reached the front door, it had shut itself. Torres yanked it open, and for a second, I saw something standing on the porch. It wasn't a person. It was tall, thin, featureless, but the shape was wrong, like it wasn't built for this world. Its head tilted when it saw us, and then it stepped aside, letting us flee into the rain. We didn't stop running until we reached the rig. Here's the part one can't explain. When we reported it, dispatch swore they never got a call from that address. In fact, they said that house burned down 10 years ago. Total loss. No survivors. I didn't believe it, so I went back in daylight a week later. Drove the same road, followed the same turns. The house wasn't there. Just an empty clearing. But the porch light was. Still buzzing weakly. Since that night I've seen it again. Not the house itself, but pieces of it. A door at the end of a hospital hallway that wasn't there the day before. A light fixture in a patient's room that buzzed the same way as that porch light. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear footsteps overhead. I don't think the house is gone. I think it's waiting. Moving. Looking for me. And next time, I don't think it'll let me out. This next one is called The House That Shouldn't Be There. I need to write this down before I convince myself it didn't happen. Before my brain does that thing it always does with trauma, sanding down the edges until it almost feels manageable. Because what happened last week wasn't manageable. It wasn't normal. It was a house. But not one that belonged. One, the detour. I've been a delivery driver most of my adult life. Groceries, pizza, now packages. I've done it all. Which means I know my routes like the back of my hand. I know the roads, the shortcuts, the dead ends. Last Tuesday night, my GPS cut out. Just flatlined. Screen froze, signal gone. That never happens where I was, a suburban area outside of town, plenty of coverage. I wasn't worried. I knew the road I was on curved back toward the highway. But then I saw something I'd never seen before, a narrow lane between two stretches of trees, with a green street sign so faded I couldn't make out the name. I thought, must be a new development, or something. Curiosity got me. I turned down it. 2. The wrong street. Right away, something felt muted. No streetlights. No glow from windows. Just black tree canopies overhead, pressing down. I drove maybe a quarter mile before the lane opened into a cul-de-sac. Only one house stood there. It was huge. Old Victorian style, 3 stories, with a wraparound porch sagging under its own weight. All the paint had peeled away, leaving gray wood. Windows like blank eyes. But the strangest thing? The number on the mailbox, 17 Ashgrove Lane. I knew Ashgrove. It was on the other side of town. Miles away. 3. The first step inside. I should have turned around. Every instinct screamed at me to back out, to pretend I never saw it. But my job makes me nosy. I deliver to so many addresses that the compulsion to check things is ingrained. I parked, got out. The air felt heavy, damp, like before a storm. The porch steps groaned under me. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of wet wood and something sour. Wallpaper curled off in strips. The floor was warped and buckling. I pulled out my phone to snap a photo, maybe to prove to myself later it existed. But the camera app wouldn't open. Black screen, even though the rest of the phone worked. 4. The rooms that didn't fit. I wandered deeper. Each room was wrong in a subtle way. The living room was too wide for the footprint of the house. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. At one point I swear I turned a corner and ended up back at the front door, except it was on the wrong wall. I started hearing things too, faint movements upstairs, like furniture dragging across wood. Then whispers, low and urgent, just on the edge of hearing. I told myself it was old pipes, settling wood. Except the whispers formed words. Not yours, not yours, not yours. 5. The mirror room. On the second floor I found a room lined with mirrors. Not modern ones, tall, warped glass in ornate frames. 10, maybe 12 of them, leaning against the walls. Only none of them showed me right. In every reflection, my body was there but my face was blurred. Smudged like someone wiped away the features. Except in the mirror at the far end. That one showed me clearly. Too clearly. My face was pale, gaunt, eyes sunken. And my mouth, it was open, wider than it should have been. A scream stretched into forever. And while I stared, my reflection moved its hand before I did. 6. The children. That's when I heard the laughter. High-pitched, echoing down the hallway. I spun around. A shadow darted past the doorway. Small. Child-sized. Hello? My voice cracked. The giggling came again, behind me this time. I turned, nothing. Just peeling wallpaper, warped floorboards. Then a whisper right at my ear. You shouldn't be here. I bolted. 7. The basement door. I tried to retrace my steps, but the hallway stretched longer, each door leading into rooms that shouldn't exist. A study, a kitchen, a bathroom, all repeated, wrong, distorted. Finally, I stumbled on a door I hadn't noticed before. Narrow, with a rusted handle. The second I touched it, the whispers went silent. That was somehow worse. I pulled it open anyway. Stairs led down into darkness. The smell hit me, rot, damp earth, and iron. Like blood. And I heard them. All the voices at once, chanting low. Down, down, down. 8. The basement. I should have run. God, I should have run. But I went down. Step by step, phone light barely cutting the dark. The basement was massive, larger than the house above should have allowed. The ceiling arched like a tunnel. and the floor was covered in water, ankle deep, cold enough to numb. Floating in it were objects, toys, shoes, bits of furniture, all waterlogged, all old. And then I saw them. Children. Half a dozen, standing in the water. Skin pale and bloated. Eyes milky. Clothes tattered. They stared at me in silence, until one of them smiled. Not a child's smile. Too wide. Too sharp. 9. The thing behind them. The children stepped aside. Something rose from the water. It was tall, hunched, with limbs too long, too many joints. Its skin looked like soaked paper peeling apart. Where its face should have been was just that same lipless line, stretching ear to ear. It didn't walk toward me. It unfolded, each step crackling like breaking wood. I ran. 10. The escape. Up the stairs, down the hall that twisted beneath my feet, slamming through doors that weren't the same on either side. I swear the house tried to keep me. Rooms shifted, staircases doubled back, doors vanished where they'd been seconds before. But somehow, I don't even remember how, I burst through the front door, onto the sagging porch, into the night air. I sprinted to my car, slammed inside, locked the doors. The house loomed in my rearview mirror as I peeled out. Except, it wasn't there. Behind me was nothing but trees. 11. Aftermath. I drove until dawn. Didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. When I finally checked my phone, the GPS was working again. Camera too. Except there was a new photo in my gallery. One I didn't take. It showed me, standing in the mirror room, mouth stretched wide in that impossible scream. 12. The worst part. I went back yesterday. I had to. Part of me needed to prove it was just sleep deprivation, stress, something explainable. I found the street again. Same faded green sign. But when I turned down it, there was nothing. No cul-de-sac. No house. Just trees. And yet, when I got home, my shoes were still damp. I know what I saw. I know where I went. There's a house out there that doesn't belong. A house that wears the wrong address like a mask. If you ever find yourself on a road you know too well, and see a street sign you've never noticed before, don't turn down it. Because if you do, the house will be waiting. And once you step inside, it won't let you leave the same. This next one is called The Man in the Reflective Jacket. I drive nights for a living. Not rideshare. I deliver lab samples between hospitals. Blood, organs, whatever needs to move quick. Most of the time it's boring. Just highways, dark backroads, and too much coffee. But a few months ago, I started seeing him. And now I can't drive at night without checking every mirror, every shoulder, every shadow, terrified I'll see that reflective jacket again. It started on Route 47, a stretch of two-lane that cuts through nothing but farmland. Midnight. Empty road. I was cruising, half distracted by a podcast, when my headlights caught movement up ahead. A man walking along the shoulder. Nothing unusual, except for two things. He was in the middle of nowhere. No houses for miles. He was wearing a construction jacket. You know the kind, neon yellow with reflective strips that light up in headlights. I slowed down, expecting him to wave for help, but he didn't. He just walked, stiff, arms hanging at his sides, head forward. As I passed, I glanced at his face. It wasn't right. His features looked melted. Not from burns, more like wax too close to a flame. His eyes were just dark holes, and his mouth stretched in a straight, lipless line. I drove faster. The next night, same route, same time, he was there again. Same stiff walk. Same reflective jacket catching my headlights. Only this time, he was facing me. Standing dead center of the road. I slammed the brakes, horn blaring, but he didn't move. And when the truck came to a stop just feet away, he vanished. No impact. No body. Just gone. I sat there shaking, headlights spilling across empty asphalt. Finally, I floored it, heart hammering all the way back to the hospital drop-off. I tried to write it off as fatigue. Hallucinations happen when you don't sleep enough. But then he started following me. Not just on Route 47. On side roads. On interstates. Even pulling into gas stations. Always the same, that reflective jacket glowing like a warning sign in the dark. Sometimes far in the distance. Sometimes in the mirror, closer than he should be. Once, I swear I saw him crouched between two cars in the hospital parking lot, waiting. The worst night was 2 weeks ago. It was raining, wipers barely keeping up. I came around a curve and there he was again, standing in the middle of the road. This time, I didn't stop. I drove straight through him. For half a second, the cab went ice cold, and the seatbelt tightened like invisible hands were pulling me back. My headlights flickered, and when they came back, the road was empty. But in the passenger seat, wet footprints smeared across the mat. I haven't told anyone at work. Who'd believe me? A ghost hitchhiker in a reflective jacket? Sounds like an urban legend. Except I know he's real. Because last night I stayed home. Didn't drive. Didn't leave the house. Just sat in my living room, every light on. At 2:14 a.m., my motion detector went off. I checked the camera feed. And there he was. Standing at the end of my driveway, jacket glowing, rain dripping off him though the sky was clear. He tilted his head up at the camera, like he knew I was watching. And then the screen went black. I don't know what he wants. I don't know why me. But I have another shift tonight, another run across dark highways. And somehow, I already know he'll be there. Waiting in the road. Or worse, waiting inside the truck. This last one is called the broadcast. I've worked at the same small-town radio station for almost 20 years. Midnight to 6 a.m. shift. It's quiet work, play tracks, read weather updates, keep the signal alive until the morning crew comes in. Most nights it's just me, the hum of the equipment, and the comforting glow of the on-air light. But last Friday night, something came through the broadcast. And I think it wasn't meant for human ears. 1. Dead air. The night started normal. Boring, even. I ran through the weather forecast, lined up the next block of classic rock, then sat back with my thermos of gas station coffee. Around 2:13 a.m., I noticed the transmitter meter dip. Just a blip, like a hiccup in the signal. Happens sometimes during storms, except the skies were clear. 30 seconds later, it happened again. A dip, then static. I patched through the emergency line to the tower crew, but no one answered. Which was strange, that line never goes unanswered. While I was waiting, the static smoothed out into something else. Voices. 2. The first voice. It was faint, buried under white noise, but definitely there. A woman's voice. Not singing, not talking, more like chanting. The words didn't make sense. Long strings of syllables, guttural and sharp, like a language I'd never heard. I leaned closer to the monitor speaker, straining to catch it, and the hair on my arm stood up. Because underneath her voice, I heard another. A man, whispering in English. Don't listen. Don't listen. Don't listen. Then the whole system screamed. A blast of feedback so loud I ripped the headphones off. When it cut, the studio was dead quiet. 3. The log. I keep a broadcast log, every song, every PSA, every interruption. Regulations. So I wrote it down, 2:16 a.m., unknown interference, voices, approximate 90 seconds. As soon as I finished the note, the printer behind me whirred. That printer hasn't worked in years. It's just a dusty relic we never bothered to haul away. But the paper feed groaned, and a single sheet slid out. 4 words in bold black ink. You heard her. 4. The phone calls. At 2:30 a.m., the request line lit up. First call of the night. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound normal. All I heard was breathing. Slow. Wet. Like someone struggling against water. I hung up. The line rang again immediately. "Stop calling," I snapped. This time, the voice was clear. A man's voice. Deep, flat. "You let it in." Then silence. The call log didn't register a number. Just blank space. 5. The second broadcast. At 3:02 a.m., the static returned. Louder, insistent. The meter spiked red. This time it wasn't chanting. It was laughter. Children's laughter, echoing as if recorded in a long tunnel. And then, overlapping it, the woman's voice again. Faster now. Urgent. I scrambled to cut the feed, but the board was unresponsive. Buttons dead, sliders frozen. The laughter grew shrill, distorted. Finally, the speakers burst with a single, piercing phrase in English. "We are coming through." And then silence. 6. The studio changes. I thought maybe exhaustion was making me hallucinate. Until I looked around. The studio wasn't the same. The posters on the wall, decades of rock bands and county fair ads, were blank. White sheets of paper where the prints used to be. The digital clock above the door read midnight. Blinking. And the on-air sign was glowing black. I don't even know how that's possible. 7. The visitor. At 3:45 a.m., someone knocked on the glass. The control room is sealed. No one comes in without a keycard. But there he was, a man, standing in the hallway, face obscured by the glare. He was wearing headphones. Old ones, massive, the kind we phased out 20 years ago. He pressed one finger to the glass and mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then the glass rippled. Not like distortion, like water. His finger pushed through, dimpling the surface. I bolted from the chair, heart slamming, and when I looked back he was gone. But the glass still bore the print of a finger. A dent that hasn't gone away. 8. The final hour. The last hour of the shift crawled. No music, no chatter. Just static, filling every channel. At 5:06 a.m., the printer groaned again. Another sheet of paper slid out. This one read, "Transmission complete." At 5:59 a.m., the morning crew arrived. Sunlight through the lobby windows. Birds outside. Everything back to normal. Except when they walked in, they froze. "Why is the clock wrong?" one asked. I looked up. The digital clock above the door read 2:16 a.m. The exact time the first broadcast broke through. 9. Aftermath. I haven't told anyone. What could I say? That my station aired something from somewhere else? That voices came through, chanting and laughing, claiming they were coming through? No one would believe me. But since that night, I've noticed things. Strange feedback in the headphones, even when they're unplugged. Static crawling into my dreams. And sometimes, when I turn on the radio at home, I catch it. Just for a second. The woman's chant, faint under the music. Getting louder. I don't know what came through that night. I don't know if it was a signal, a warning, or an invasion. But I do know this. If you're ever listening to late night radio and the static deepens, if you hear laughter or chanting in a language you don't recognize, turn it off. Immediately. Because once you hear it, they know you can. And they'll keep broadcasting. Straight into you.